was accused of being a stickler on Monday night about starting on time. So we'll absolutely start on time tonight. And yes, I am a stickler about that because I think we have a lot of business to get through on any given evening. So being able to start on time and having a quorum so we can start on time is absolutely critical. You're going to hear the town clerk talk a little bit about the importance of actually getting to town meeting early because of some of the extra stuff that we'll be talking about this evening during Town Meeting 101 that everybody is going to be able to take advantage of. But first, let me welcome everybody, new and old town meeting members, that are online. I am sitting in for the MC duties tonight because Mr. Mizuko, our town manager, is a little under the weather. And the last time that I can tell you that I was with Mr. Mizuko when he was under the weather, I ended up being in quarantine for 10 days. So we asked him not to show up tonight. So we'll keep it moving, we'll keep it interactive, and we've got a lot to cover. John, let me start off with tomorrow. There will be yet another info session. And tomorrow, hopefully Tony will be back, but if not, I'm sure that Mr. Rosen will be sitting in, or someone else, to go over the special town meeting warrant articles. So again, the annual town meeting is pretty much very heavy on the budget, which you heard about the other day, and we'll be hearing a little bit more about with Municipal Finance 101. The special town meeting is a potpourri of articles that have to do with, in the case of the spring town meeting, really kind of closing out the fiscal year. All right, is there a question back there, sir?
Yeah, can I have your name, please?
I'm sorry?
What's your name?
Your name.
Oh, my name. I should say that.
You should.
I am Jerry Slater. I am the town moderator. And everyone, the first thing you're going to learn tonight is in town meeting, when you are addressing town meeting, you go through the moderator and you address me as Madam Moderator.
Madam.
I tell this joke every time. I love it. My husband loves it even more. It is the only night a year that you can call me a madam, and I'm happy.
Thank you.
So that's the way that I am addressed. I will be joined tonight by several guests, and during the Town Meeting 101 presentation, and then Alan Slater, who is sitting in for Mr. Mizuko as well, will be taking us through municipal finance. But we actually have several members of the FinCom in the audience, and we also have our Director of Finance, our new Director of Finance in the audience as well. Jeff, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hi, Jeff O'Neill, Director of Finance. How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
And his team is sitting, the folks that keep him in line are over there. So. All right. So, I think that gets us through a welcome.
Thank you.
Town meeting. This is the scene that you see when you walk into the auditorium. High school auditorium. We'll be doing, starting on May 13th, we will be doing both the annual town meeting and the special town meeting. This is a kind of a scary sight. I wish I could tell you that there would be a piano serenading us when you're there, but instead you're going to see me on a podium, and you're going to see several people surrounding me, including Jeff, Mary Lou Folan, our town clerk, and behind me, which will be brand new, which we'll be talking about in a second, you're going to be seeing John C. and our Director of IT, Sean, because we will be starting electronic voting with this town meeting, which we're pretty excited about. All right, talked about coming early. As you walk into the auditorium foyer, you're going to, after you check in, and Mary Lou will talk about what that's all about, you're going to see a table that will have new handouts on it, or existing handouts. We always have supply of the warrant. I'm sure there'll be budget books there. Anything that is new that there hasn't been time to send to you in advance will be available then. You go into the auditorium. What will be reinstated with this town meeting that we've kind of gotten away from because of COVID is we are asking town meeting members, and we're going to corner off the back of the auditorium, so the town meeting members need to sit in the front sections or in the very front of the rear section. Non-town meeting members will sit in the way back. So we're going to be enforcing that again. I think we can still allow for social distancing, masks are still allowed, but we want town meeting members to be near the front for a couple of reasons. One, so the moderator, and as you can see, even though I look really tall when I'm up on stage, I'm kind of not, so it's really difficult for me to see. The lighting in the auditorium, on the front of the auditorium, the lighting is fabulous. In the seats, especially in the way back, not so good. The other thing is the practicality of being heard, and even though we have mics and everything else, there are some dead spots. So we're going to ask, and we're really going to enforce that, so I'm asking for your cooperation there. All right, you picked your seat, and we're ready to go. So, here are the basics. We have representative town meeting. I can tell you that we are very, very fortunate to have elected town meeting members rather than an open town meeting. I'm on the board of directors for the Mass Moderators Association, and every meeting, the moderators who have open town meeting just come up to all the representative town meeting moderators and say, I wish I was you. You're elected. I think that comes with the responsibility, and I think our town meeting members accept that responsibility. Part of that responsibility is in the town meeting guide that's put out by the League of Women Voters. And for any new town meeting members, we have the young lady over there who has a supply to give to you. She also will be giving them out at the next session tomorrow, and also first night of town meeting. All right, we have 9 districts, and again, everybody is elected. We have 2 different types of town meeting. We have the annual town meeting, which, as I described before, is primarily the budget. And then we have special town meetings throughout the year, including brand new that we started this year was a winter zoning article town meeting. For anybody who was with us for that, that was a rip-roaring time. Pretty much a pretty exciting town meeting because of the MBTA zoning article, but it also, I think from the moderator's point of view, it actually makes a lot of sense because it gives the planning board and the community development town planner the time to make sure that they are prepared for that meeting. It's a focused meeting, and zoning is complicated. For town meeting members, there's a fair amount of prep that we need you to do for those meetings, and for everybody involved, there's an awful lot of prep, so it makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, the fall is typically when we bring capital items as well. All right. Meetings are on Mondays and Thursdays. As of now, they always start at 6:30. By our rules, we are supposed to end at 10:30. We go for as long, Monday and Thursday, as it takes to finish our business. Sir?
Yes, Madam Moderator, you mentioned 9 districts. How many members per district?
33.
Thank you.
But don't get too used to that because it's going to change. So in a year, but that's what it currently we are per our bylaws. That's where we're the number 6. All right, let's keep going. All right, we are extremely fortunate in Norwood that our town meeting rules are in the bylaws for the town. Bylaws are up. You can either get a hard copy. This is not the most current version, but it's special to me because when I got elected moderator, this was the version I was given signed by the town clerk. It's also up on the website, so, which is great. I'll tell you, every time I go to the bylaws on the website, automatically it opens to the town meeting rules. So obviously I've been looking at them a lot. It makes it very simple because most everything is there. And when you think about it, it's rules around our quorum, rules around debate, rules around the different motions that can be made. So a couple of quick things to mention. And this came up at our last town meeting, so I think it's worth mentioning. What a point of order is, which is probably one of the most confusing things that people, town meeting members, don't know how to utilize. That means because you think there is, you raise that because you think there's a rules violation. As simple as that. So you think that something is not going on per our rules. It's rare, but it could happen. Nobody is perfect. It is not because you don't like something. It is not because you want to try to open the debate again when it's closed. It's not because you want to offer an amendment. It is strictly because you believe that there's a rule violation. Another one that comes up from time to time, and again, it's the confusion, these two are a little confusion, is the point of privilege. Point of privilege has to do with usually a personal issue. It could be, Madam Moderator, point of personal privilege. I think the gentleman next to me needs medical assistance. That's the extent of that particular point. So rarely used, but it could be someone could say that the microphone isn't working. And that's affecting them as well as the body. That would be the time that you would use that. Again, not to say you don't like something, not to reopen debate or anything of the sort. And again, I will, to the degree possible, kind of guide people through that. Our rules talk about how we debate. Our rules talk about who can speak. So at town meeting, and this is one of the things that folks often don't realize, you don't have to be a town meeting member to speak at town meeting. As long as you're a registered voter in the town of Norwood, you can speak at town meeting. You can't vote, but you can speak, and you can also register to speak, which I'll talk about in a second. Also, at times, proponents of articles may have an attorney who is representing them speak on their behalf. You will hear that happen from time to time. Again, that particular individual needs to recognize, to say, I am speaking on behalf of, and why they are speaking on a particular article. It's usually part of the proponent's presentation when we see that. If you were a town meeting member, and let's go to how to the next slide, I think. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll get back to that in a second. Yes?
Madam Moderator, is business owners also allowed to come and speak at town meetings?
If they have to do with part of the presentation, technically they're supposed to be a registered voter in town. A business owner who may have property that may be affected by a zoning article, I tend to give, rightly so, they are paying taxes in the town, so it makes sense there. They have been recognized in the past. Good question, sir.
Yes. How many times do you speak on one item? I've seen somebody say, I'm this, then they speak again as that. How many times are you allowed to speak on one particular item?
So our rules are pretty, basically they give the moderator a little bit of leeway, but I will tell you what our rules say is you shouldn't recognize someone more than once if they've already spoken, unless they are a proponent of the article and they need to address a question that is coming from a town meeting member.
I've seen somebody speak 3 times. say, I'm a lawyer, I'm this, I'm that. And it's been allowed every time I've seen
Well,
it, at least twice.
Typically, you're not going to see it unless it's around a particular aspect of the article where that person happens to be a subject matter expert or needing to address it. I'm not going to call on someone who has spoken already when there are 15 other hands up. What I try to do as moderator is try to let everyone who wants to speak once before I'm going to recognize someone again. Now, we've had people aggressively jump in, and that, again, I try not to gavel people, but unless someone is addressing a particular aspect where they're the subject matter expert, I'm not going to call on them again. I'm going to let other town meeting members speak.
To that gentleman's point, if he had a question about that in town meeting, because he wasn't sure if he was somebody that was a proponent of the article, would that be a point of order if he were to ask that?
It could be. I mean, the rule is loose, to be honest with you, but I would say it's a point of order. I would recognize it as a point of order. Mr. So-and-so has, gotten to speak twice already, and nobody else, all these other hands are raised.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good call. All right, the warrant. Mr. Donnelly is going to talk about this in a second, and I know Mr. Donnelly. I'm moving quick to get you up here. The warrant is basically the announcement that town meeting is being called. It is the business at a high level that we're going to address. It may not be the exact motion that we're going to vote on at town meeting. Everything that we vote on is put in the form of a motion. In many cases, it's exactly the same. There are no changes from what's printed in the warrant. But there could be things like an update to a number. That one number may have been printed in the warrant, and when there's a little bit more time, we find out the number is slightly different. That will be noted in the motion. The other thing so think about the warrant as the announcement, town meeting is being called. This is the business. These are the articles, and each article talks about specific business that we will be addressing. So it could be the budget for the school department. It could be an appropriation to buy land. And again, the exact dollar amount may be in the motion, it may not be in the warrant article. What we can't do at town meeting is go outside what's called the four corners of the article. So the four corners of the article are, if we're put in the warrant that we're going to be voting on a zoning bylaw that affects this particular area in town, we can't then all of a sudden at town meeting start talking about a completely different area of town with a completely different zoning article as part of that particular article or as part of the motion. So you will often see the moderator, if debate starts to go a little bit off of those four corners that surround the business of the article, that I'm going to say I'm not going to allow that discussion to go further because it's not within the four corners of the article. So again, something to be aware of, but you're going to see the warrant, and many times the motion will be slightly different, but on par with what was announced in the article.
Madam Moderator, what about the converse, limiting the scope of the article? You're saying you can't go off and do new things, but can you strike things from it and constrain it?
That's known as an amendment. So, and that would be in the form of a motion, and you can say, again, as long as it stays within the confines of the business that was announced in the article is the simplest way that I would say. That's fine. And again, amendments happen all the time. I know at this last town meeting, there were There were a couple of people that said it wasn't fair that somebody made an amendment. That's absolutely what town meeting is all about. That's part of the debate process. There are going to be amendments. You're not going to know in advance. I'm not going to know in advance. It happens on town meeting floor. That's the beauty of town meeting.
I have a question, Madam Moderator. I have a question. Who writes the articles?
Well, you're going to find out about that in a couple minutes. So it'll be a good segue to Mr. Donnelly.
Okay.
All right, how to address town meeting. You raise your hand to be recognized. Everybody's done a fabulous job, so I hope you continue to addressing me as Madam Moderator, even though it's not town meeting yet. Once you're recognized, either there'll be a microphone to walk up to, depending on where you're sitting, or there'll be a runner who will get a microphone to you. Please wait for that microphone to come so everybody can hear you. If you have a question that you want to address, whether it's to the town manager, whether it's the board of selectmen, whatever, you're not addressing them directly. You're going through the moderator. You can say, Madam Moderator, if the community development planning director can address this. It's still going to be the moderator's call on how to get that question answered. So you're not dealing direct with town officials. Registering to speak. This is one that is kind of a biggie. It's in our rules. I think we're really fortunate, honestly, to have this, because as much as sometimes it doesn't work the way you want it to work, if you register to speak, and you can register to speak once the warrant comes out with the moderator, you can do that via my email, which is moderator@ma.gov. You can send me a letter. Good luck with that. You could call me on the phone. Good luck with that also. The best way to do it is actually email. That guarantees that you will have the opportunity to speak on that particular article. It is the only guarantee that you have that you will be able to speak, especially when it's a highly controversial article. I will recognize registrations in the order that they come in. And if you register to speak, you cannot move the question, which means you cannot make a motion to end debate as a registered speaker. That is against our rules, and that is also against, I think, the spirit of what a registered speaker would do. Registered speakers, after the proponent of an article is given 10 minutes to present the article, if it's a group of proponents, we go up to 20. Subsequent speakers are given 5 minutes. Every one of those categories can ask for additional time, and town meeting can either vote to grant a time certain one-time extension or not. Town meeting rarely doesn't vote the extension, but that's the right there. I think there's a question. Ann? Ann Mankiewicz?
That's just
I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
I just want to make sure I understand about registration to speak. You mean that even before the meeting takes place, like let's say today, I could contact you to be already put on the list to speak?
Correct. As soon as the warrant comes out, it is in our rules. So when you take a look at the bylaws and you look at the rules of town meeting, you'll see it right in there. As soon as the warrant comes out, I will accept a registration on a particular article.
Okay, follow-on question to that. Has the warrant come out on everything as far as the next town meeting?
Yes, it has.
Okay, now, I want to know, this is really new to me, and I was very upset at the special town meeting that it was front-loaded with everybody who was pro this 3A. So this is really interesting news. that I have never heard before, and I have been to multiple town meetings. So I can register with you to speak as of tonight if I want. I can't do it at this meeting. What is the vehicle for me to register to speak right off the bat at town meeting?
So as I said a couple of minutes ago, an email sent to the moderator, which is moderator@norwoodma.gov, is the best way to register to speak.
Okay, I
should
missed
set-
that piece.
So you should tell me what article you'd like to register to speak, your name, and if you're a town meeting member, your district. If you are a resident or a registered voter, your address.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Want to move along?
I have one other question about
Sure.
that. So, if you register to speak, it's only for the articles that are on the warrants, or can you,
Yes.
or can you speak on another
No.
matter if you want to?
No, only on the articles that are on the warrant. And I'm not going to, and we are not going to address business outside of what is on the warrant for town meeting. All right. Can we move to Bob and then come back to electronic voting? Because Bob, I know you're conscious of town. So somebody asked about the warrant and how the warrant is set and written. Bob Donnelly, who's the chair of our Board of Selectmen, is going to talk about that for a couple of seconds.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to talk about the Board of Selectmen in general and move into the warrants, if you don't mind.
Whatever you want.
Okay. So good evening. Bob Donnelly from the Board of Selectmen. I thought I'd just kind of give an overview of what the board's role is, one of which has certainly had to do with the warrant, and we'll talk about that. But we are a 5-person board, each of us running for an individual 3-year term. We meet about twice a month to conduct business meetings for the town. Some of our major responsibilities, we have appointment authority of several positions in town. So our general manager, our director of finance and accounting, and our treasurer. That and the most significant one for us is the general manager. So in addition to appointing the general manager, we are responsible for the administration or supervision and oversight of the general manager. And that's a big role. The general manager has administrative responsibilities for a very broad range of town services, very broad. We also have the authority to appoint a number of members to boards and commissions. Just to give you a flavor for that, we are the appointing authority for our Zoning Board of Appeal, our Airport Commission, Sustainability Commission, Disability Commission, Council of Aging, Economic Development, Board of Assessors, Cultural Council, Board of Registrars, and the Cable Commission. And in addition to our twice-a-month role sitting at the board, we all participate in other various committees and and commissions. So we are members on various boards, including the Capital Outlay Committee, the Budget Balancing Committee, and the Community Preservation Committee. So there's a lot going on with the Board of Selectmen. We also have the authority to grant all licenses, and particularly our liquor licenses. We are responsible for setting fees, and we set the annual tax rate, and we are the commissioners of light and water and sewer. So the rate setting authority for those utilities resides with us. And when it comes to the budget, we'll talk about the annual budget. Well, from the town side, we are responsible for the review and approval of what the general manager submits to us for his budget for the year. So in your annual meeting, in your annual town meeting, you will see a large budget book, and it contains the warrant articles that are associated with this year's fiscal year 25's budget. Warrants are one of the authorities that is granted to the Board of Selectmen. Is we are responsible for preparing and voting to place articles on the warrant. That is a singular authority that we have, whether the article is specific to a planning article from the planning board, or a financial spending article, which is delivered through a recommendation by the FinCom. It's our responsibility to make sure those articles are put on the warrant. In terms of who prepares the warrant, it does depend on what the subject matter is. For the town annual budget, that's basically a coordination through the general manager's office is the one that prepares the warrant for us. When it comes to the spending warrants, that's something that Jeff and his team, Mike Rosen, will verbally draft. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, they will draft out the language for us to consider. So several weeks before an annual town meeting is set, we have to have a meeting where we review the warrant. We review the warrant and we take a formal vote to place those articles on the warrant. Subsequently, after we've taken that vote to put the matter on the warrant, we also individually, as board members, have an opportunity to take positions on the warrant. And that's something you will see in the yellow pages that are distributed to each town meeting member. You will see that in addition to getting the town warrant, specific articles, or warrant articles that are going to be voted upon, you will also get a document from the town. I don't know if you've already gotten them perhaps, the yellow sheets. Those are explanations of what each warrant article means. And if it's specific to, and we take positions on that. So, for example, we will have a warrant article coming up in the annual for community preservation spending. Several projects in the Community Preservation Act. There are warrant articles specific to those, and for each of those projects, we actually took votes. In the warrant, in the yellow pages, will give you a summary of what the selectmen's positions would be. Sometimes it's 5-0, sometimes it's 3-1, 4-1, sometimes it's opposite. So that will give you some detail in terms of what the selectmen see as they're taking their formal positions. The budget articles are pretty set in by the time we're sitting down to do yellow sheets. They're probably, the budget articles are set because we have a very thorough process, and I think the Finance Commission can take you through that. By the time we're seeing the warrant article for the annual, the budget has already gone through a rigorous public review and debate. Through budget balancing, through the school committee, for the town side, the general manager side, through us, gets on the warrant, that's what it is. So those are pretty pro forma language as far as I can see. On the special town meeting warrant, we...
I do have a question.
Yes, go right ahead.
On the articles, I'm going to say this in a strange way because we're getting older here, but I would prefer, because the last couple of times we've seen the special warrant and the articles, the bigger items, the more controversial items are at the end of the list, and the easy ones, like for $500 or $1,000, are at the beginning of the list, the same way that these articles are listed. So I would prefer that to be reversed, that while we're all there at 6:30 and fresh, and then when it gets to be 11 o'clock at night, we all want to just go home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I would prefer that so who decides on the order of the articles?
It's to check, but we get the review of the warrant article, and if we feel that there is a movement needed in those articles, we'll let the general manager know. But that is the role that the selectmen would play as well.
Yeah.
So you like the special meeting, I think the last article is unpaid bills.
Right.
$2,000 or $3,000 every time. That's always the last article because we know that's going to be
Right,
non-controversial.
Right.
So more controversial
But I'm
ones.
sure if you just look at it, I'm sure you'll see that I would prefer the bigger items earlier.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but-
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So the selectmen's voting recommendations, if it's fluid enough, did somebody abstain or the reason why one didn't
It's either
vote?
an abstention.
Yeah.
Someone might have recused themselves from the vote or was absent for their meeting. Yes, sir.
John Cochran, I'm actually on the airport commission. Being on the town meeting, is there any time you have to abstain from the vote or abstain from, or do you have to acknowledge the fact that if you're going to make an opinion that you are actually appointed to a commission?
I don't think the commission members would be restricted from voting on a town meeting article.
Yeah, and look, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, town meeting is exempt from conflict of interest rules. So, believe it or not, and we don't make the rules on that. That's Massachusetts, that's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts conflict of interest rules. And actually, I just know that because we just had conflict of interest training on Saturday. So town meeting, ironically, is totally exempt. So there are many, for instance, there are many town meeting members that are also town employees, and they vote on the budget that pays them. That's perfectly allowed. So that's something that people, it's a bit of a head scratcher, but that's in order to let it truly be a for the people town meeting, regardless of if you might have a perceived conflict in other bodies of government.
Thank you.
So yes, sir.
I just have a question about when the warrant articles are developed. So my best example is Monday night we learned that, there's $500,000 additional required for waste management. So there's an extra spend, right? And then we have $1.6 million roughly of these special warrant articles. Was the $500,000 taken into consideration when they're developing? You voted on these warrant articles to approve or not approve, or what is the order?
If it's on the warrant, then if they're on the physical warrant you have in hand, then we did vote on them, yes.
So when do you vote on them?
But
throughout the
we
year?
usually set what the general manager's office, Mike can explain, will set up, probably in January, February meeting, the general manager's office produce a timeline for it, and Mike, if you could speak to that.
Hi, Mike Rosen, I'm the assistant town manager. We do have sort of an annual calendar that we keep for the 3 town meetings that go out the year. So I would say in general, the selectmen are usually asked to begin to review the warrant articles a month prior to town meeting. So I believe it was 2 or 3 meetings ago from the selectmen on their normal schedule that they voted on the annual town meeting warrant, which is why it was produced in the budget book and sent out and when it's prepared. And then at their last meeting, they voted on all the special town meeting articles as well. So that the whole point is that we want to make sure that's in your hands 2 weeks before town meeting, so you have plenty of time to review all the materials. But it is a little bit of a rush to the finish line on sometimes, just because the town meeting's coming and we try to get everything in front of the selectmen as soon as possible. But sometimes some things take work right up to the last second. Like as I said earlier, sometimes numbers change right up to the last minute as well. But that's generally, we try to get everything all set by a month prior to town meeting.
Yeah, I think it does come close to the deadline. I mean, maybe the school department's public hearing was just less than 3 weeks ago. So,
we also had a thing that was very unique this year where we had the March special was basically right up against the annual. So like that we didn't have a lot of time between March 20th or whatever it was and now. So it was a lot. It was pretty interesting for us to have to do 2 warrants at the same time.
I'm certain Madam Moderator is going to speak to it. So the warrant has been signed and approved, distributed to the town meeting members. Positions of the select board take place on the yellow sheets. I know FinCom is going to speak to their process. FinCom is the board that will actually read the motion for any financial motion or financial spending that's done. It will be the FinCom that will read that motion. Usually at an annual town meeting, it's sort of shared between the chair of the FinCom and the chair of the selectmen. Most anything that's not related to spending will be presented by the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and those items that require spending will be read, the motions will be read into the record by the chair of the FinCom. The March, a little bit different. March, we have our land use special town meeting, and those articles, yes, the Board of Selectmen will again approve the warrant, but the actual motion and the warrant itself, the verbiage in there comes from the planning board. So just a little nuances in terms of roles and responsibilities at town meeting itself. Do you think about motions? You going to think about motions?
Yeah, let's talk about the
You're all set then. Any other questions? Thank you. Welcome to town meeting.
Thank you.
All right. You guys are going to be the first town meeting 101 where we talk about electronic voting. And we couldn't be more excited. Mary Lou has got a big smile on her face, our town clerk. So first of all, a big thank you to the town meeting members who were in place, who voted on the rule change to enable us to use electronic voting as a method of voting. So we now have added to the famous voice votes, standing count, and the special vote that it would take for a secret ballot, which is rarely used, thankfully. We now have the efficiency and the transparency of these babies. So, I gotta tell you that everybody was joking with us in the Mass Moderators Association because we are one of the last towns to adopt electronic voting, and certainly within our area. So this is huge. We have contracted with a vendor that actually does the voting system. I don't think people are going to think this is good or bad for the U.S. Congress. So I know one of our members asked, how do we know that we got a good vendor? Well, you know, figure whether you like the Congress or not, it was a pretty good endorsement for Meridian. So what this is going to do is kind of be a bit of a game changer. You will receive, when you check in, and Mary Lou will talk in a second about what happens when you check in, but you're also, in addition to your badge, the famous pink card, you're also going to receive a voting device. The voting device is actually assigned to you. So someone asked how many town meeting members we have per district. For District 1, this device, which is number 1 through 33, is assigned to each one of the members individually. So we know who you are, number 1. We also know if you don't return your device at the end of the evening, retired as of today Chief William Brooks will show up at your house and ask you. He was looking for a little something to do in his retirement. He's going to hopefully not have to pay a house call to collect a clicker. The devices are totally secure. They're radio frequency. They are not internet. They do not work outside of the auditorium. And another really practical reason for having people sit near the front of the auditorium is in order for your device to be read by the transponder, which is going to be on stage. So actually directly behind me. So real practical notion there. If you leave your seat for any reason, you take your clicker, and I'm just going to call it the clicker because that's what we fondly call them, your clicker with you. So there will be someone right at the door to take the clicker. If you are going to a restroom, you're getting a drink of water, whatever it may be, they'll hold it for you, and then as you come back into the auditorium, they will hand it back. When town meeting is concluded, like I said, the great staff of the town clerk's office will be standing at the doors to collect your clicker. That clicker will then be given back to you at the next session of town meeting. It is
Same clicker.
same clicker. You will always have the same one assigned to you. So that for a couple of different reasons. Now you're not sharing your clicker, so I'm going to say this right now, and I'll say it the night of town meeting. It's your clicker. So you don't say, hey, I'm going to the men's room, just vote for me on the next one. No, because you're not going to be able to leave without, you're going to have to go back to your seat, get your clicker, and then go to the men's room. So, and there'll be an officer there who will help Mary Lou and her team.
That's the question. Are you going to be able to track the vote, or are you just going to get the final tally?
So I'm going to answer that question in just a second, and there is an answer to that. All right, so when you vote, which I think we're going to, yeah, boy, you know this stuff, John. There are 3 buttons here. We also, if anyone is sight impaired, we do have Braille versions of this as well. If anyone needs additional assistance, we will have people from the town clerk's office who will be able to sit there with you. But you will actually be able to see there are 3 buttons. Yes is the 1A green button. No is the 2B red button. And abstaining is the 3C button, or the yellow button. So it's pretty easy if you can read a traffic light. You can see this. The words are also written out. When you vote, your vote is actually recorded on the clicker. There's a little screen on the clicker, and you'll see it says, okay, I believe, right? Meaning that your vote is recorded. One of the other things is if you don't think your vote was recorded or you change your mind, the last vote is going to count. So you can vote again. And that last vote will be the vote that counts. The way that we will be opening up voting is the moderator will say, okay, we are going to open up voting. I will have a timer, and basically I may have a little bit of extra time in the beginning as people get used to this, and we're gonna have a couple of practice votes in the beginning of the first session of town meeting in May. But typically it's going to be 60 seconds for a vote. We'll be able to see that the votes are being recorded. So we'll know if there are any issues with clickers because we'll be monitoring them. We're very, very fortunate to have the real A-team that's been involved in this entire project, which has been the town clerk, Mary Lou, John C. from the general manager's office, and Sean Warnock, who's now our new director of IT. And I'm just kind of the baggage on the committee, so those three have really carried this one. John and Sean will be monitoring. They will know if something is not recorded or if the clicker is not working. So we have that backup as well. We have extra clickers if someone's clicker is not working. We have battery supplies. Batteries are supposed to last for 2 years. We actually bought a supply of batteries just in case, so we have those. All right. Pretty self-explanatory, as I just explained, that basically you're going to see OK in the keypad. And then to your question, the total results will appear on screen. So when the vote is closed, you then will see a pop-up that will say 151 yes, 40 no, 20 abstains. And I'll be able to declare the vote depending on what the quantum of the vote is. And what that means is most of our articles and motions are majority votes. There are some that are 2/3 votes. I will note that moving the question takes a 2/3 vote. Buying property and selling property is a 2/3 vote. Borrowing is a 2/3 vote. And Bob mentioned the famous unpaid bills article, 9/10. So what's really cool about electronic voting is I don't have to rely on Jeff to ask him about the math. The math will automatically be done for us. Sir.
Now, is that of the quorum at the meeting, or is that of the total moderator, or town meeting member?
It's how many town meeting members are there, and the only way we can have a vote is if we have a quorum. All right.
Any questions?
Another question.
Will there be attendance and everything displayed on on the clerk's?
Sorry?
Will attendance be displayed on the clerk's website? Town members not there?
So if the town meeting member is not there, there will be no vote
Okay.
recorded for that particular member.
Okay.
Will there be any voice votes? Will this work for everything or?
No, we're not going to use the clickers for everything. So, I mean, it's the moderator's discretion, that's in our rules. There are some things that, I'm not perfect, but, you know, you can kind of tell sometimes where it's going to be unanimous and we don't need to necessarily utilize electronic voting. So it's the moderator's discretion on when we use it. I will tell you, anything that's going to be a 2/3 vote, we're going to use it. If it's anything other than majority, that's going to be standard operating procedure, as far as I'm concerned, at least coming out of the gate.
So every vote will be registered, so if I'm clicker 12, my vote will be under 12, under number 12. Do we then, as town meeting members, later on have access to see how people voted?
Yes, you do. Madam Clerk, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, there will be reports that we can get from the vendor, but and then the first time, and we are gonna post the results of how people actually voted the next day on the website.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be, show up in numbers on the night of town meeting, whatever number you are or whatever. And then the next day it'll show up as who voted how.
Okay, thank you.
Ann?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to some of the things that you mentioned, and maybe I didn't quite understand it. If somebody is a town meeting member and they have a vested financial interest in a particular article passing, should they not abstain from that vote?
They don't have to abstain from that vote, Ann, because they are exempt from conflict of interest laws. They might choose to abstain from a vote, and that's a personal choice. I can tell you personally, at one point, there was a vote that would have affected my employer, and if that vote actually, the article was withdrawn, if that article actually happened, I would personally abstain. But you are not required to, because, as I said earlier, town meeting is exempt from conflict of interest laws.
Why? That doesn't seem right, because
You
it seems
can-
like
you
if
can-
anybody has a vested financial
Miss-
interest in
Miss-
an article
Miss-
passing.
Excuse me, Ms. Mankiewicz, that is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts law. So, it's not our rule, it is not a recommended practice, it is the law of the Commonwealth. And
Okay,
conflict of
I have
interest-
taken several conflict of interest courses as a teacher, and to me, this falls under conflict of interest, but I bow to your authority.
Trust me, having just gone through the training on Saturday and having this question be asked, I am very confident in the answer. And again, I know it doesn't make sense, but that is the law, and it is truly to make town meeting representative and for the people. All right,
Okay,
Ann, hold on.
How does that law,
Hold
how
on,
does that
Ann,
law get
Ann,
changed?
Ann, excuse me, Ann, we've got another
Sorry.
question in the room, Ann Haley.
Good evening. Thank you for doing this. I wanted to know that sometimes people are interested in certain things and they come and they vote on those certain things, and then they have to get home because they have children and all sorts of other things to attend to. How are we going to handle this when we actually don't have a quorum? And will it show up on the slide or whatever it is that you're going to show us?
So anyone can question the quorum at any time, and that is in our rules, and that rule will still stand. We would hope that people, since you are representing your districts, that you would stay to vote on everything. But that, just as we're handling it today, the rule will be the same. Just like someone could look in the hall and say, I don't think there's a quorum, and call for a quorum call, it's going to be
I
the
wondered
same.
if it was something that would be on your shoulders only.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Madam Moderator, what is the quorum?
141.
141, as of today.
Yeah. We have 280 town meeting members.
And that's a great segue, John. I think I finished. Yeah. So now let me. We've talked about Mary Lou Follen, our town clerk, and now we're going to give her an opportunity to tell you all the stuff that her office does. And I'm going to tell you, folks, town meeting would not run the way it runs without Mary Lou and her fabulous team. They do an amazing job, and we are so
Not just us, we all. It's really good. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate everybody that got elected as a new town meeting member and re-elected as a current town meeting member from the election that we just had. The election that we just had, after the election, my staff sent out packets to everybody that was a new town meeting member and current town meeting member as far as a term letter goes. So in the packet, you got a town meeting bylaws, which were the yellow sheets, the specific town meeting bylaws. That was in the packet. You got a letter explaining, at the term, I call it a term letter, which told you exactly how many years you were elected to town meeting for. They go 1, 2, and 3, depending on what the vote was. That's how you were elected, or if you were write-in, chances are you were just a one-year member, that type of thing. You also got an email information form, because we are sending most stuff out. We try to send out, we have to do it by law, through the mail, as well as we're trying to get as many email addresses as we can, because we do send out reminders about these sessions. We sent one out this afternoon. So if we can get as many town meeting member email addresses, we're also collecting that. And you also got in the town meeting bylaws, there's a procedure in there that explains how you, it's also in a letter that we sent to you as well, explains if you move within your district, you have to let us know so that the mail can follow where you move. If you moved out of a district, like if you move from District 4 to District 9, what happens, the procedure is you'll serve in 4 until election next year, and then you'd have to take nomination papers out and run in District 9. But you would continue to serve in the one that you got elected to. And then if you move out of town completely, that's good to let us know that, because then we just take you off the list. Also, we sent a link out this year. This year, we didn't send out the bylaw booklet or the charter booklet, because we're on a new code. It's called E-Code 60, which is a new way that we're publishing the bylaws, which is strictly online. So you can go online, there's a link on the Town of the Norwood website on the front page. There's a link, and that will link you right to the bylaws of the town or the town charter. So we're trying to use that, and that'll show you all the bylaws that Jerry spoke about, and you can either print it off, it's not necessary, you don't want to, you can look through it. If there's one you want to print off, it shows you how to do it right in the instructions on the E-Code. Then we just that went into effect. This is actually the first year we're using it for town meeting. So the procedure is, hopefully everybody did get their packet in the mail. The procedure is, there's a letter also that says you can come into the town clerk's office and get sworn in. If anybody can't get into my office to be sworn in, don't worry about it, because I do a general swearing in the first night of town meeting for anybody that hasn't been sworn in. So if you can't get there, don't worry about it. We can do it that night. So when you come to town meeting, outside in the hallway of the auditorium, there's 3 tables set up. My staff is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have iPads that we check you in on. So if you're in District 1, you go to the table where District 1 is, they'll check you in, give them their name, they'll check you in on the iPad, they'll give you a pink attendance card that has the date on it, and you sign your name next to the date on the attendance card. And when you get the attendance card, you take it and you give it to the policeman that's on, he'll stand right at the doorway. That's how we get our quorum. We kind of have clickers of how many people have come in and registered and that type of thing. So everybody has to sign in that's a town meeting member. Then you'll also get a generic badge which says town meeting member. You have to wear that badge when you're in the town meeting, because that's how we know that you are a town meeting member and you can vote. Okay? And it's just a generic badge that says town meeting member. That's all it says. The other thing is, and then we're going to also, obviously you're going to get the clickers. My staff is going to have a list of, all the districts and stuff, and, you're going to get district number, you're going to get clicker number 5 or whatever, whoever. So that's going to be your number going forward. And on the way out, like Jerry said, if you do get up and leave, if you have to go to the ladies' room, the men's room, or if you're going to leave completely, please give the clicker to my staff. There'll be someone you'll always see them, they're always right there and stuff. Give it to them to hold on to, they'll return it to you when you come back in. My office particularly, we're responsible for sending out all kinds of town meeting information. We always do it right before town meeting. If it is too late, like Jerry said, there'll be handouts. They'll be right inside the hallway before you get into the main auditorium. There'll be all kinds of handouts there. And if somebody else has something that they want to hand out, they can leave it on that table as well. Let's see. My role specifically as the town clerk, I have to sit up front and assist the moderator, and just basically is taking notes on the town meeting, taking notes of all the motions, how they were voted, that type of thing. And like I said, the next day, the reports from the electronic voting will be posted of who, you know, who voted how, and the numbers and stuff. And then, are we gonna start posting
Yep.
attendance?
Yep.
Yeah, we're probably gonna start posting attendance records as well as what the motions, how the votes were taken at the town meeting itself. So people can go on the website.
Whereabouts on the website does that kind of stuff appear? 'Cause
There is,
I've always been confused because I never see really fresh information. It just seems
yeah,
like,
it's under documents, and there's a town meeting section.
Oh.
And we'll probably start putting it under the town meeting section. I believe boards and, is it documents and boards and commissions or something? And then there is a town meeting section. And that's probably where we'll start posting everything, under that. That's where the list of town meeting members is currently, okay? So like I said, we have 280 town meeting members as of today, and the quorum is gonna be 141. And also, I would advise, please try to get there well before 6:30, because it does take a few minutes. You know, my staff isn't, you know, just getting you used to the new people. We know a lot of people, but we don't know all the new people and stuff. So it's gonna take a while. You know, we gotta check you in, you gotta sign your card. We have to give you the clicker and stuff, so it is gonna take a while. But it's imperative, you know, and there's always people that just come at 20 past 6, and then the line is out the door, and Madam Moderator likes to start right on time, and it's good because it starts at 6:30. We should have a quorum by 6:30. So I can't say that enough, to try to get there is, you know, close to, we're there by 5:15 at the latest. So, you know, if everybody wants to come check in early, get a front row seat. And then also, if you haven't picked up your budget books, they're in my office. Anybody can come in. If you know someone that can't get in to get one, we can give it to you and stuff. We have a list going, and you know, we have some here and stuff. So, but the budget books are available. So, or they're available also to download online. The link is online. If nobody wants to get a book, they can download it. All right. That's about it. Cool. Okay.
All right, so we talked about, Mr. Donnelly talked about motions, and at annual town meeting, I'm going to tell you that the star of the show is the FinCom, and candidly, the chair of the FinCom does yeoman's jobs, because we're talking about the budget. So it's the role of the FinCom on any monetary article, any monetary motion is going to come from the FinCom. The FinCom will be maybe the proponent, may not be the proponent, but they have the opportunity to speak, either present or speak on every motion. So talking a little bit about the role of the FinCom is, we're lucky to have Maya Bodenhofer, the chair of the FinCom, here with us tonight.
Hi everyone, I'm Maya Bodenhofer. I am the chair of the Finance Commission, one of 5 finance commissioners, and it's our role to kind of, we are elected to serve town meeting. The Board of Selectmen are an executive board. They are responsible for running the town. The school committee is responsible for running the schools. The Finance Commission is responsible for making recommendations to town meeting. We do the due diligence for town meeting. Town meeting members, of course, are always welcome to do their own due diligence on any financial aspects of things that are going on with the town, but we, as the elected finance commissioners, have taken on the responsibility of doing that. With regard to conflict of interest laws, they do apply to finance commissioners. So we, as finance commissioners, have to follow open meeting law and have to follow conflict of interest laws. But as town meeting members, it's just town meeting that's exempt from those laws. We make recommendations to town meeting on all financial articles. We are actually the ones who are making the motions at town meeting on anything financial. There was a question about when do we start the process of talking about the warrant and all of that and the articles that are going to be on the warrant. As Bob Donnelly said, the selectmen are the ones who actually create the warrant. That's the legal document that says it's the official announcement of what we're going to talk about at town meeting. But the budget process is bigger than just what's going on the warrant. There's a budget process that starts, you can argue it ends, starts November, December, but really kicks off in January. The general manager's office works on a budget. The school committee is working on a budget. In Norwood, we have what's known as a budget balancing committee. It's a townwide committee. It has 2 representatives from the Board of Selectmen, 2 representatives from the Board of Finance, 2 representatives from the school committee. Also includes the general manager, the director of finance, the superintendent, and the school business manager, all part of this. And we get together and talk about the overall budget plan and make recommendations as the budget balancing committee, and then the finance commission takes votes on the plans for the budget. So the question about the $500,000 of extra money for waste management, that was discussed starting in January. The budget balancing committee met in January. I think our last meeting was the end of February or maybe into March. Don't remember the exact date, but it's all available. So that's the process for that. Every year you get an annual budget book. This budget book in the beginning has a management overview. There's a letter from the general town manager. There's a letter from me as the chair of the finance commission. There's a lot of financial information here, including like a dashboard that shows information about the financial health of the town, and other backup information. And then there's the budget, which goes on and on and on. There's a lot in here. The annual town meeting warrant is included in this budget book for your, I guess, convenience. It's a completely separate document that's approved by the Board of Selectmen. The budget book is approved by the Finance Commission. But this does include the warrant, and it includes a bunch of supporting information at the back of the budget book. So this is generally what the budget looks like. We're talking about, this is an example, an older slide. This is the FY24 airport budget. I think many of you know, but I'll just say it again. The town follows the same fiscal year that the state does. So our fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30th. And it's named for the June 30th when it ends. So we are currently in FY24. Fiscal year 24 will end on June 30th. Then there's a closeout period, but it's officially over on June 30th. And fiscal year 25 will begin on July 1. So I know it's May of 2024, but this is the FY25 budget book, because we're going to be approving the fiscal year budget for FY25, which starts July 1. If you look in the budget book, you will see that it has FY21. It goes back all the way to FY21. So fiscal year 21, the actual numbers. Fiscal year 22, the actual numbers. Fiscal year 23, actual numbers. For fiscal year 24, we only have the budget number because, of course, the fiscal year is still ongoing. We don't have actuals until after June 30th, and then a couple of months after that to give the accounting team time to wrap everything up. And then, so you'll see the fiscal year 24 budget and then the recommended fiscal year 25 budget. So what we're voting on is this last column. These other columns are for your information purposes so that you can see how things have changed over time. Okay. Want to mention the school budget. The school budget falls under some slightly different rules than the general government budget because of state law and the Education Reform Act was from the 1990s, I think, sometime. So for the schools, the school committee has authority to move things around within the budget. Town meeting votes on the bottom line for the schools. The school committee generally will tell you what their plans are for how they're going to spend the money, but they do have the option to move things around. When the general government budget, it's a little bit different. we vote for each department, we vote for salaries and operating expenses within each department, and there's, if things need to move around within that, it needs to either come back to town meeting, or there's a couple of other rules for ways to make smaller changes than that. This year, the school committee is putting out a separate document for the school budget, looking at the school budget in the way that they look at it. The numbers that are in here are how our accounting system looks at it, but that's not necessarily the easiest way to understand the budget. So this is the document that they would like you to refer to for the school budget. Bottom line numbers are the same between the two. One of the things that you will get is what we call a pink sheet. We call it a pink sheet because it's usually printed on pink paper. It shows the recommendations from the Finance Commission for what we would recommend for the special town meeting articles. So there's things about, we want to spend, there's a recommendation to spend a certain amount of free cash on a particular item. The Finance Commission will take a vote on that, and then their recommendation will be summarized on a pink sheet, which looks kind of like this. So it's a spreadsheet that just shows all the different categories and what the recommendations are from the Finance Commission for town meeting members. We also will make the motions at town meeting, and so article by article we will be telling you what our recommendations are. The Finance Commission will be meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. and we will be looking at our pink sheets then. Then once we've taken all of our votes on our recommendations to you, then we will be mailing out the pink sheets, so you'll have those well in advance of town meeting. That's it. All right. Any questions about FinCom? Yes.
So I just want to get clarity again on the school committee, because it is obviously it's the largest item in the budget. They have sole discretion as to how to move the monies around.
Yes.
And so town meeting only approves
the bottom line when it comes to the schools. And again, that's a Commonwealth of Massachusetts law. That's not a Norwood thing.
Right. So is there an open session for the school committee? I'm not aware of that. Town meeting members could show up and give their input before.
School committee is required to have an annual budget hearing on their budget. That happened about 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
In March.
Yeah. So I guess a little more than, time is flying. So yes, end of March I think was the budget hearing. I do know that meeting was recorded by NCM, is available online. You can watch that.
Right.
But yes.
And anybody can attend that meeting?
Yes. All of our meetings are public, open to the public. School committee, Board of Selectmen, FinCom,
Great.
all open to the public.
Excellent. Thank you.
They're open to the public. That does not mean that people can participate in the meeting. I just want to make that clear, right? The school committee does have, during the budget hearing, there's specifically a time for people to talk about the budget. They also have a public comment period as part of their meeting. The Board of Selectmen does not do that, so you're welcome to sit and watch, but you cannot participate, you can't shout out. The Finance Commission, the same thing. We do not have a formal public comment period, and only the members are allowed to deliberate and vote. In general, the FinCom is a little bit more casual, I guess, or flexible about certain things. And so if we know that someone has come because they have something they want to tell us, we will generally, hear, but only about things that we are on our agenda that night. We are subject to open meeting law, so we need to post our agenda at least 48 hours in advance of our meeting, and we need to limit our deliberation to those items that are on our agenda. Any other questions? All right, great, thank you.
Thanks, Maya. Any questions before we move on to municipal finance? Are there any other questions on town meeting? And I'll be here afterwards if you have other questions. Yes, sir.
Since we switched to the electronic voting, if we take an electronic vote and that falls short of quorum, does that count?
Yeah, the vote, you can't question the quorum in the middle of,
But with the
but you can
electronic
question
voting,
it
you know
afterwards.
you can. But
Once the quorum is questioned and we validate whether we have a quorum or not, candidly, we would have to adjourn at that point.
but the vote that
The
say
vote-
fell short would still
The
stand.
vote would still count
So
if it
you-
was declared.
So you
if it
have
was
to know
declared.
in advance. So
Yeah, because again,
watch the
per the
count.
rules, if it's declared, so. And again, that's been this way forever, in our rules. The only difference that you're gonna have now is it's
Quicker
going to
counts.
be easier to see. It would be the same thing if we took a standing count. You're gonna know what the numbers
You gotta be quick for a standing.
Right.
You said if it's declared, I'm not sure what you meant.
So per our rules, the moderator declares a vote closed and declares the actual
It's done.
results of the vote. So once that happens, we're
Right.
we're
And you
done.
couldn't question the quorum in the middle of it anyway.
No,
so.
you couldn't, because that would be ruled out of order, by the way. Afterwards, you could,
After it's declared.
correct.
But,
Is that a point of order?
but from what I remember of our past practice is that it would still have to come from the floor. That the moderator or the town clerk may add it up, but if somebody on the floor does not make the motion, they ain't going to be volunteering it.
Right.
It's true. Unless there's like only one person in the audience, and then, I mean, I like listening to myself speak, but not that much. So hopefully that won't happen. I mean, one of the other things that we've done, did not do it, full disclosure, I did not do it for the land use town meeting, because we really were concerned that if we finished early and met for another night, that we were in jeopardy of not having a quorum for a lot of different reasons. But for instance, with the upcoming town meetings, but there are certain points where it doesn't make sense. It may only be 10 o'clock, but it doesn't make sense to continue. Either I'm looking and saying, I don't think we really have a quorum, and I don't want to wait for that gentleman over there to raise his hand and question the quorum, or it's just a natural time, or we have a article coming up that I know is going to, maybe there's a lot of registered speakers, so I'm the first one to say, let's come back fresh the next day, the next scheduled day of town meeting, and start fresh. And that kind of is to the point too about not having the real heavy, the large articles coming, at 10, starting at 10 o'clock at night if we can avoid it. So, all right.
Madam
So,
Moderator? So is the count of the town meeting members announced at the beginning of the meeting?
I'm sorry?
Is the count of the present meeting members announced at the beginning of the meeting?
We'll announce that there's a quorum.
There's a quorum.
I'm not going to say, we don't say how many people are there.
But you
We
don't say
just
how
know,
many
you will know, for instance, on the 13th, if I gavel and say we have a quorum, that we have at least 141 people. All right, Municipal Finance 101, and we've got the A team here, because not only do we have Alan Slater, longtime FinCom meeting member, but we do have Mike Bodenhofer, and we have Ann Haley from the FinCom, and we have Jeff O'Neill and his team, and we have Alex, our town treasurer, as well, all here. So Alan's going to take us through municipal finance, which is really, really important with annual town meeting coming up.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Standing in for Tony Mizuko. Found out about 5:30 today that Tony wasn't feeling well, and he asked me to stand in. So this is a typical Tony Mizuko presentation where there's a lot of words and not a lot of time to present it. So let's try to go through this as quickly as we can. Budgets. Again, your budgets are limited by the amount of money that you have to spend. That's why you always say it's a statement of priority, because there's only so much money you can spend. So the different departments will get together, with the general manager and the general government side and try to come up with the budget that's appropriate for each of them. Generally, each of them won't be satisfied with the amount of money they have, but it's really what they have to live with. And lastly, it's a snapshot in time. It's what we think will be our expenses when we prepare the budget. We know that during the year things will happen, and you have the ability at a special town meeting to amend that budget if again, if something happens which requires that particular department to need additional funding. This is a sample budget. I think you saw a similar one in Maya's presentation. This is the town clerk's office, not to try to be mean to Mary Lou and try to pick this apart. But in general, it's the salaries and operating expenses. That's what makes a typical departmental budget. Sometimes individual departments may have a small line item for capital expenses. Stabilization fund is otherwise known as your savings account. It's designed to accumulate money for either capital expenses or you have an emergency situation. I think probably about 20-25 years ago, I think we had an oil spill that the town was responsible for cleaning up. That was funded with money from the stabilization account. The last time I can remember us taking money from the stabilization account was probably about 12-13 years ago, where we took $3 million to pay off a portion of the cost of the new DPW building, which in turn reduced the amount of money we had to borrow and in turn reduced the amount of money that we had to pay back on an annual basis, debt service. If you go back just for a second, good practice is 5 to 10%. We have about 6%. That's okay. We really should have a little bit more. But again, you have so many competing interests. It's one of the things that the bond rating agencies will look at when they determine what the bond rating will be for specific communities. It's not the only thing they look at, but it's something significant enough for them that they put a lot of weight in what we have in reserves.
Question? So on the stabilization fund, if you have a good year, do you, we always increase it even further than that?
Yeah, we try to increase it every single year. Really depends on how much money we have available in the budget. There have been a few years recently where we've had very good years with free cash. And the feeling is, let's put it into stabilization. Let's put it into a savings account rather than spend it on one-time sort of nice-to-have items. Free cash. You probably heard this term used a number of times. It's really surplus revenue. Revenue which hasn't been expended. Instances where we may budget for a particular category, like local receipts as an example. You may budget that your ambulance receipts are going to be $2 million a year, hypothetically. When everything is said and done at the end of the fiscal year, you have $3 million worth of ambulance receipts. That additional $1 million would go on to free cash. This is something that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has to certify. Chief Financial Officer Jeff At the end of the fiscal year, we'll prepare a report for the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue will certify the amount of free cash that we have that's available to us for us to spend during a fiscal year. We usually get that, say, around October or so, and we should have it in time to use for the special town meeting in the fall. Again, looking at what free cash is, surplus revenue, again, I mentioned, things like ambulance receipts. We're going to have a great year again this year for building permits. When you look at some of the major projects we've had, projects such as Moderna, FM Global, the hospital, we did get close to $4 million of building fees from the hospital. I happened to be sitting with Tony Mizuko when he was given the word that the check came in from the hospital. I said, Tony, deposit that before the ink dries. Just a couple of examples of free cash. You assume, somebody gets $1,000 a week, $52,000 a year. They leave, the position is vacant for five weeks. The new person gets the same amount. So instead of getting paid $52,000 a year, that position gets paid $47,000 a year. That extra $5,000 would go to free cash. Look at it on the other hand, you budget $100,000 for an item, it only turns out to be $95,000, your free cash will be reduced by $5,000. Different revenue sources. These revenue sources are going to be found in section 1 of your budget book. Tax levy, can only go up 2.5% a year under a Proposition 2.5, plus new growth. New business and new industry moves into town, that generate additional taxes. That goes over and above the 2.5%. And it also includes, if it could, the debt exclusion from the two school construction projects we've had, both the high school about 15 years ago and the new middle school. Your local receipts, your excise tax, auto excise tax, meals, ambulance, building permits. There's about 15 to 20 different categories. State aid, which is otherwise known as the cherry sheet, and other sources, the override stabilization fund, and free cash. We've used this year for the budget, which is not really good fiscal policy. We've used almost actually a little bit more than $5 million of override stabilization and free cash to balance the budget. Long term, it's not good policy. Eventually, you run out of those one-time sources. Yes, sir.
Just curious, what is pilots?
Excuse me?
Pilots.
Oh, payment in lieu of taxes.
Thank you.
Al?
Yeah.
Could you tell us about the debt exclusion
Okay.
on that, how it works?
All right, we've had 2 debt exclusions. Those on the Proposition 2.5, probably around 2010, 2011, we had a debt exclusion for the high school. Last year, we had a debt exclusion for the new middle school. Those are outside of Proposition 2.5, which is why it's referred to as debt exclusion, and those are temporary, meaning if you consider 25 to 30 years temporary, but after those are paid off, they go off the tax rolls.
So it doesn't, it's not sitting.
You're basically increasing your allowable revenue by that debt exclusion. So you are paying for that debt for the 30 years of
So
middle school.
Right.
So you're adding that to your revenue.
So the word exclusion is really for
It's probably
excluding from 2.5.
2.5.
Excluding from 2.5, yeah.
That's correct.
Right, and then who decides, I guess, on that increase? Because we were excluded from that 2.5.
Excuse me?
We're no longer bound by that 2.5.
For that, again, it's very specific, because when you have a debt exclusion, there are 2 ways. It has to pass 2 separate approvals. One is town meeting. Town meeting, because it is borrowing, is required to vote for it with a 2/3 majority. It then goes to the citizens in a special election. That is a majority vote.
The pilots, the payment in lieu of taxes, is that utilized to get industry to come to Norwood, to build in Norwood, or is there any other situations, because that could have an overall effect on the taxpayers, homeowners. In other words, if you say, like a big company, they come here and they say their tax revenue should be, in the millions, and they say, we'll give you $500,000. Now there's a shortage, $500,000. The town accepts it for X amount of years, so that $500,000 is going to be spread across the taxpayers?
That's something a little bit different, I think you're referring to. I think you're referring to tax increment financing, TIF, where we may try to give a benefit to a new commercial establishment or an industry to come into Norwood when they have choices to go to other communities. We may try to give them an incentive. We may try to give them a small incentive, reduction in taxes for a period of time in order to come into Norwood. Pilot is a little bit different. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. It's something typically that a nonprofit who doesn't have to pay taxes but still uses Norwood services, we may have an agreement with them that they will pay X amount of money to the town in any given year, which in turn, at least partially pays for the services which they receive from the town.
Thank you.
Thank you. The reserve fund, this is primarily controlled by the Finance Commission. During the year, I think as Maya explained, the school department, the school committee has bottom line approval over their budget. They can move money around. The different departments in Norwood can't. If there's a surplus in the police budget and there's a need in the fire budget, sorry, they can't take from one to the other. It's not allowed under state law. Finance Commission has a certain amount of money available, which we can use for unforeseen expenses to try to tide those particular departments over until there's a subsequent town meeting, usually a special town meeting, where town meeting can in turn vote more money to put into that particular account. Revolving funds. Again, when we're talking revolving funds here, this is really more for general government. I believe in the school department, revolving funds will sort of roll over, as I recall. Okay. But this is just for general government. You pay into the recreation department a certain amount of money every year for whether it's just a pool tag or for a particular program. That goes into a revolving fund that they use to pay the expenses associated with that program. At the end of the year, hopefully you'll have a surplus, and that'll revert to the general fund and ultimately to free cash. And then at the beginning next year, you start the process all over again. Debt service, this is what we refer to as a credit card in the FinCom. It's money that we borrow to pay for different projects. As well as we pay for capital equipment. If the fire department, a few years ago, we paid $1 million. The fire department needed a new ladder truck. That was $1 million. That was paid for out of debt service. And as I said, it's really a loan. It's no different from an auto loan or a home mortgage. Norwood is fortunate. We have a high credit rating. It's a AA+. The only thing higher than AA+ is AAA, and I believe there's only about 25 towns or so, cities and towns in Massachusetts that have that AAA. Something we try to do. It does save you interest costs if you do have a AAA versus a AA+. We have a little bit way to go in certain ways, but it's something. But we're trying to do that every year, with advice from financial advisors, and, you know, maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't, but we still have a very strong fiscal policy here in Norwood, and our rating is high. Okay, just go back 1 second. Just the last point I think is really important is that municipalities borrow money to pay for capital expenses. You can't borrow money to pay for your operating expenses. It just is not allowed, and even if it was allowed, it would be horrible fiscal policy to do so. We talked a little bit about debt service. Debt service within the levy. Typically, in our fall town meeting, we will have a town meeting primarily associated with capital expenses. And usually that's debt service. Sometimes we can pay for that cash if we have a lot of additional free cash, and we should this year because of some of the high building permits. We can pay for some of the capital projects out of cash. Sometimes, if it's a large capital project, we can't. And that'll be debt, and that'll be debt which goes into the general budget. We have a little more than $3 million this year, I believe, of debt on the general budget. And again, this is all in section 1 of your budget book. Outside the tax levy, that's what we refer to as the debt exclusions of Proposition 2.5. And utilities, our water and sewer, our light department, the capital associated with those are paid for out of water and sewer rates or light rates. Okay, I think this sort of explains what I just said. We have a little more than $3 million inside the tax levy in the annual budget for debt service, and that explains the last line, how much debt service we have presently for the high school and for the middle school. We do debt service for those types of projects. I believe it's equal principal payments, which means the payments are a little bit higher in the initial years, but they go down in subsequent years. I think we've already talked about Proposition 2.5. We did that. We did one 5 years ago. We'll see where we are in a couple of years. Tax rate. When we go to the next slide, I think it'll give it a little bit of a better idea of where we are. If you look at Norwood, sort of right in the middle of the table, and look at what, again, this is just the average. Some people are higher, some people are lower. Average tax rate in a single family Norwood was almost $6,900. A lot of money. But then you compare that to some of our adjoining towns. Canton is almost $8,000. Dedham over $9,000. Walpole close to $10,000. Westwood close to $15,000. Sharon over $13,000. We pay a lot of taxes in Norwood, but we have a lot of services also. Some services which other towns have, and I think in part it's due to the large commercial tax base that we have. Our commercial tax base probably pays close to 45% of our annual taxes. It varies a little bit in a given year, but they pay about 45% of our taxes. Their taxes are a higher rate than the individual citizen is, individual homeowner, and that to a great extent contributes to the, I hate to say it, the lower tax rate. Even though people think we pay a lot of taxes, the lower tax rate as opposed to some of the surrounding towns. Utility funds, these, electric and broadband, water and sewer, we pay separately with rates. The important thing about having a utility fund is that the utility funds can only be spent on items related to that particular utility. And you can't spend general fund money on utilities. There is a system, it's referred to as indirect costs, that's chargebacks, where utilities will utilize certain services within general government. They may use accounting services, they'll treasurer services, they'll the bills that you get every month. That's generated by Alex's group. We were able to charge back the utilities for those types of costs. Okay, Community Preservation Act. State act. Individual communities have the right to enter into this or not. We did probably 8-9 years ago, I would think. And it's a surcharge on our taxes. It's 1% for Norwood. It's spent on different types of projects: historic preservation, open space, outdoor recreation. And it's overseen by a committee. In order to spend money, it has to be appropriated at town meeting. The Finance Commission will weigh in on whether we feel it's a valid expense or not. And town meeting has to approve money that is that comes out of the Community Preservation Act. Any questions, by the way? Okay. And that's it. Next Monday, May 13th, be there. Be there or be square. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Ann.
I'm sorry, I'm just coming in late for this question. But something that has confused me, and it hasn't quite been explained clearly enough to me, whatever happened to all the money that we got from the sale up in Upland Woods?
Money we got from Upland Woods went in two different areas. One area was to pay off the existing debt service that we had. Then there was some additional money left over. That's about $10 million. $2 million of that, I believe, was it for previous capital expenses, I think? Can't remember exactly.
Right, sort of indirectly
Yeah.
to the override stabilization
Right.
fund.
Yeah, but it was really, technically, it was used for, I think, for capital-related projects. We have about $8 million left over in that fund.
Why can't some of that money be used to defray taxes or to pay off the Coakley?
According to the Department of Revenue, it can only be used for capital related expenses. So, it's sitting in that account until we could come up with what's felt to be appropriate capital type of projects, to fund out of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Follow up?
Kevin?
If, by your own statement, DOR says capital expenses
Yeah.
for the Upland Woods,
Yeah.
wouldn't the Coakley Middle School be a capital expense?
That's been funded by borrow, so that's already been funded.
The bonds have already been bought for that.
Thank you. I'm just,
No. Yeah, we bought $100 million worth of bonds.
Sold $100 million.
Sold, excuse me. Thank you. Anything else?
Then following,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
then following on to his question, before we took out these bonds, could we not have used some of that money as capital towards the Coakley?
It wasn't the decision that was made at the time, so that's really a moot question right now. I understand what you're saying, but it's the horse is already out of the barn.
Well, going forward then, if we have any other kinds of expenses like this, i.e. to prevent a 2.5 override again, could we find some way to tap into those funds such that our taxes don't squeeze us any more than they already do?
As I said, it can only be used for capital-related items. That's directly from DOR. We didn't think that was the case. DOR admonished us, no uncertain terms, and that's just the way it is. That's not our call, it's their call.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Actually, what's the,
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Ann.
I just, this book is full of really good information, and it kind of can overwhelm you, I think, because it always overwhelms me. And I'm used to it. But on page 4G, number 1, okay, I'm going to back up. When you look at the budget, you're going to see several years' worth of the budget, and you're going to be saying to yourself, oh, this went up, this went down, why did that happen? And all of those kinds of things. But once you start reading that, you'll, on page 4G1, starts an explanation. So you're not standing there at town meeting. Pardon me?
For Delta? For golf?
Golf.
Okay, thank you.
So if you are looking at the budget and how much the budget went up or how much it went down, on under 4G, you will find the explanation that the town government has given you for what that movement was, okay? Because otherwise, you ask a lot of questions at town meeting and everybody goes, oh. And so it's good to have this. It's a really good tool, this 4G, okay? So that it really explains why they did what they did with the budget, okay? Thank you, everybody. Sorry.
Thank you. See you.